Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Adult Improver series of Perpetual Chess. This, of course, is a regular series where instead of interviewing some big shot about the book they just wrote, we interview an accomplished amateur, and I am excited to share the story of our guest, who we will introduce in a minute. But first, wanted to mention a few things. Number one, for those of you who heard the last couple episodes, we've got a couple special offers from friends of the pod. Chess Dojo just launched Chess Dojo 4.0. They're unrolling some new features, and of course, you may have heard the Chess Dojo founders on the podcast over the years: Jesse Cry, Kostya Kavutskiy, David Pruce. So right now they're offering a big discount if you use the code BEN40 to join their community. And speaking of communities, another good one is Chess Mood, which of course has this giant video library. And I interviewed Avtik Grigorian, their Grandmaster founder, last year. They're working on this chess AI capability to review your games. So these are both great products, and these two entities are friendly. They're not really competing with each other, nor is our longtime sponsor, Chessable, which I just wanted to give a shout out to Nate Solon, whose course on the Semi-Slav is finally out. So be sure to check that out as well. And as always, if you sign up for Chessable Pro, use the link in the description. As for the Adult Improver series, I just want to remind folks that there's a Spotify playlist if you want to check out the back catalog of the many amateurs I've interviewed over the years. There's also a list on the Perpetual Chess webpage, and there's even a form somewhere that you can fill out if you're interested in becoming a guest. Our guest today, actually, I found out by him emailing me, and I do have a long list of potential guests, but I'm always eager to hear more people's stories. So don't be shy to nominate yourself or a qualified friend of yours, or just someone who you think has an interesting story. So as for our guest, he is a 39-year-old dad who started chess during the pandemic. He's also a senior analyst at Statnett, which means he works on the electricity grid in Norway, where he lives. After discovering chess during the pandemic, he started working hard on his game, and he just recently had a phenomenal year where his FIDE rating went from 1,400 to 1,800. Now, he's since lost back some of those points, as happened, but even 1,400 to 1,700 is an amazing gain, and that's about where we are now, despite a tough loss last week that he was just telling me about. But in any event, our guest has 2 kids at home. He's got a busy life, so he's made sure that he emphasizes working efficiently and not spending. He's unable to spend 5 hours a day on chess, but managed to make great progress nonetheless. And one of the few guests I've had, Adult Improver guests, who started competitive chess as an adult. He learned how the pieces move as a kid, as he will be telling us, but never played tournaments as. So without further ado, I'm excited to welcome to the program Torkil Jara Bårdsgjerde. How'd I do, Torkil?
Thank you, Ben. That was excellent. It's an honor being on this show.
Thanks. Yeah, excited to have you. So we always joke when I have guests on that I'm worried I'm going to mess up their names, and I'm practicing, but Torkil's last name is a doozy. So that one in particular, I will not be saying again during the course of the interview. And he assured me that I could actually call him Thor. So if you don't mind, I will call you Thor. Does that sound good?
Go ahead, Ben. I mean, Norwegians struggle with this name as well. So
okay,
don't feel bad about it.
That makes me feel better. So, Torkil, let's dive right into your chess origin story. So you did mention in an email to me that you learned as a kid, but then what during the pandemic got you back into chess?
Oh, we're going straight for the good stuff. I think I should start a little bit about my background. I grew up on the western coast of Norway in the second largest city called Bergen. And to skip this geography lesson, it rains a lot on the west coast of Norway. It's the same as Seattle. You have this thing called holographic rain. So I grew up in Bergen, where it rains 260 days a year on average.
Jeez.
Yeah. And I spent my holidays in Ålesund, which is a city slightly further north on the west coast, which is the least sunny city in Norway. So, I've spent a fair amount of time inside growing up, you might say. And my family has always been fond of games. So I remember chess from our cabin as a part of this 8 games in one set where the chess pieces was fascinating. So I wanted to play, and my dad knew how the pieces moved, but nothing else. So I played my sister, I beat my sister, I played my mom, I beat my mom, I played my dad, and I beat him eventually. And we're talking like a grand total of maybe 25 games. And as much as I didn't know what a pin was, I knew that, the knight couldn't move if you pinned it with a bishop and the king was behind. I knew that was a rule. But if you had asked me 6 years ago what is a tactic, I wouldn't have been able to explain it at all, and I wouldn't have known. So chess was just like one of these games that was at my cabin when I grew up. And as a Norwegian, of course, at some point you realize that there is this guy called Magnus Carlsen, as he's really good at chess. So it kind of started going into the background of my life as an adult. And then I had this situation which more or less describes a lot about me as well, I believe. And this was a good 10 days before the country shut down in the pandemic. At the time, I was working at the Ministry of Finance, and that was my first job, which I was really proud of. Like, I'm an economist, so it feels like an achievement to have managed to get into such an institution and actually work with the state budget on a year-to-year basis. And I'd worked there for a year and a half, and in my own eyes, at least, I was this young and aspiring professional, 30 and a few, doing well. And I entered the lunchroom where there was this new guy. And he was tall, and he was handsome, and he was talking all the time, and making all the girls laugh, and just being like the show of the party. And I mean, if I should be completely honest, I probably got a little jealous. Like, he took the role which I perceived to be my role. So he kind of annoyed me. Just the way when someone who's young and so good at everything can be a little annoying. As we drank our coffee, the other colleagues left, and suddenly it was just the two of us, and suddenly he started talking about chess. And he said he enjoyed chess and played quite a lot of chess. At this point, I know somewhere in my brain that I'm getting into trouble. I'm letting my emotion dictate what I'm saying here. And as he talks about chess, I start saying, yeah, I'm quite good at chess as well. And, we should play a game someday. And of course, the guy goes more or less, we can play on chess.com. And I'm like, oh, yes, of course, there is a thing called chess.com. I kind of knew that. And he wanted to play with time. I had never played with time. I knew it was a thing because I'd seen the Carlsen games, but they were classical games. He wanted to play 5 minutes on the clock, and that terrified me, like instantly. But at the same time, once you have claimed that you're quite good at chess towards a completely random new colleague, you can't 5 minutes later admit that you've never played with time. So I just started arguing that I need some more time, blah, blah, blah. But nevertheless, we decided that we should play a 10+3 the same evening. And, no surprise, he completely destroyed me. Maybe I'm actually being a little rough. He beat me comfortably 3 times in a row. But I was not without chance. I still remembered how the pieces moved. And the most surprising thing was, this is so fun. Once you have the clock and you have this component that you need to move within a certain amount of time, it gave you that extra pressure in the game, which I've never experienced before. And as much as it was fun, it was also so incredibly painful to lose. I cried when I hung up on Teams. I was so devastated. When I tried sleeping, the positions from the game kept popping back up in my mind, and I couldn't sleep. And, finally I fall asleep, and the next morning, 3 minutes after I was awake, my brain started, you lost in chess yesterday. 3 times in a row. You have to deal with this somehow. And it made such a huge impression, which I haven't felt any game do that to me in quite a long time. And I think we've all been in that situation. You're at work, you don't want to meet someone, so you avoid them all day. I did that for the entire next day. And then, of course, comes the moment. And I had my own office at this point, so I had a door I could close. I had it closed all day to avoid him, obviously. And somewhere late in the day, 4:30 or something, I can hear from the knock that it's him. And he comes in, and he is so smug. He is so happy with himself. and just starts talking about a lot of chess stuff I didn't understand at all, playing the King's Indian, open files, discovered attacks, and I realize, of course, I have realized all day that he's better than me. The only rational thing to do here is just to admit that he's better than you and move on. But I had a case where my brain and my mouth disconnected again. This happens to me sometimes. So when we started talking about the fact that he had won 3 times in a row, the best I managed to say was, well, I'm a bit out of form. Which is just not true. I have never been in any kind of form in this game. And I even managed to say, like, give me some weeks and we'll give it another go. And you know, I haven't played in a while. Give me some time to brush off the rust. And when he leaves again, I'm like, what am I doing? What am I getting myself into here? This is incredibly stupid. But at the same time, when you come at a junction of life like this, I could chicken out. I knew that was the best idea. But I decided that, you know, okay, let's see how good I can get in a few weeks. Like, it's a really complicated game, obviously, but I'm sure I can rise from, like, the low standards of just knowing where the pieces move, how the pieces move, to, like, a fairly decent level in a few weeks. That wasn't true at all, of course, but I was greatly helped by the fact that suddenly society closed down. So when we had our first lockdown, I was already in the mode that I should try to learn how to play chess. And suddenly I couldn't do anything. You were stuck in your house. You weren't allowed to leave, more or less. So this combination of coincidence sent me down the chess rabbit hole. And I'm still making my way out of it, I guess.
I'm right there with you. I'm still been in it for 30 years or something.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
More than 30 years. But yeah, so once you're in it, I mean, that's an amazing story. It's so funny and so relatable. But once you're in it, like, how did you begin to figure out what to do to get better?
I googled how to learn chess. And the first thing that pops up is a lot of stuff on YouTube.
Right.
And I go, what's this? They make YouTube videos about chess? That's super interesting. And I quite quickly found at least Gotham Chess was in the picture quite early.
Yeah.
Also, I'm very happy I did this. I found Hanging Pawns by
Nice.
Stepan Tomic, which maybe is my favorite YouTube channel. And of course, I drifted through a lot of the others, and after a while I found Daniel Novoditsky as well, which I also really like. I mean, a lot of these people are incredibly talented. And these days, I mean, I think also like Anna Kramling and Anna-Maja Kasarian's channels are absolutely excellent. So if want to learn chess, I would say that, what was it you said? That it's like catnip to you? The videos where they summarize their games from tournaments are incredibly interesting to watch as a chess player. And I don't even consider that chess training. I consider that chess entertainment more. I mean, it's not really training, but it's a way to surround yourself with chess, and you might learn like a tiny little sliver of chess from it. But it's so interesting just to hear how even these really strong players, like, they get afraid when someone plays a move they didn't see coming. I found that fascinating. I thought, like, when you're a really good chess player, you're not haunted by this anymore, but apparently you are. But yeah, so YouTube was one thing. And I watched some YouTube, and I found out that there is this thing called tactics, which you probably should train. And I would say that I spent most of 2020 playing rapid games, because I'd seen at one video that you should play the longest time format available to you. And Rapid was the only one I could play on chess.com where pairing didn't take like 10-15 minutes at the time. So I started playing rapid games, and I started doing puzzles on chess.com, like, not very systematically, but just more or less. And it led me, I think my starting rating was around 1,000. It went a bit up and down from 1,000 to 1,200 for most of the first year. I had like a small peak towards maybe 1,300, and then it went back down. And it was good. I mean, I got in the game, but I also saw that I'm not making sufficient progress doing this.
But
I had a few.
that's a pretty good starting level. I mean,
Yeah,
do you think it
maybe
was
it
somewhat
is.
instinctive for you to sort of like keep your pieces safe, or why do you think you were at such a decent level to begin with?
Yeah, I couldn't attack at all. I
Uh-huh.
just did not. I focused on not hanging pieces and
Yeah.
grabbing whatever free material I could. And I hoped that that would lead me somewhere. But I mean, at the same time, if someone, say, played the Sicilian against e4, I wouldn't know what to do. And I would just get crushed every time. I did fine towards other players who tried to attack too eagerly, but once I played someone who had like a balanced approach to the game, they would quite quickly see that I had no ability to attack. So there was quite like a hard roof on 1200 at the times, I would say.
But you eventually broke through. I mean, you eventually made some more progress.
I did. I had a moment around Christmas 2020. I had made some time.
So we're like 8 months into this obsession at this
Yeah.
point. Okay.
And then it had just been like random puzzles on chess.com and playing. Like as often as possible, which wasn't that often, but it was quite a lot because I was very enthusiastic. Like if I had time, I would try to spend time. And to this day, I think I have played 2,000 to 3,000 rapid games, which is the main chunk of what I've played. I've played less than 100 classical games as well. So that's what I've played. I've done some blitz. I've never done bullet. I don't really like the fast time controls. But yeah, going back to Christmas, I had arranged some time, I think 3 hours or something, where I was supposed to, sit down, focus, play my best, see if I could reach like a new rating peak. And I lost like 6 games in a row. I played terribly. I went on tilt. I did all the stuff you do. I got really angry, left the laptop, popped up a can of beer and sat down and watched some Spanish La Liga. I'm a former soccer player, so I still watch and enjoy soccer. And the game I watched was not a historic game in any sense. It was Real Madrid playing towards Almeria or something, like a really small club. And they just had put some solid people in like the center line of the team. So goalkeeper, center defender, central midfielder, striker were good. The other one were youngsters and B squad players. But they just crushed them. And as I watched, I could just see how they had this team which just passed the ball along so smoothly. And in particular, I've always been a fan of this player called Luka Modric, which is just excellent passing with every possible piece of his foot he can use. He will use it to pass the ball in some creative way. And I sat down and wondered, what is it I have to do in chess in order to get to the point where I can do the equivalent of just passing the ball like this? What is like the bread and butter of chess, and how do I train it so I can get like to the next level? And the thing that struck me since I've played football is when you play this, you have to repeat a lot. Like if you want to be a good passer, you have to pass the ball several hundred times a day for years. And I realized I'm not doing anything systematically here. I'm just randomly either playing or doing puzzles, whatever I feel like. When I play the games, yes, I look at them afterwards, but sometimes I don't really understand what's going on. Sometimes I can see that it's a blunder, but I can't really explain why. And I'm not getting anywhere. I wasn't talking to anyone about chess or anything. So I decided to see, is there somewhere where I can systematically train for this a bit better than chess.com? And I found this awesome thing called Chessable. And that led me to the Chessable starter pack I would like to recommend if people are in the same situation as I am. The first one is Common Chess Patterns from Benedictine.
Yeah, he's a good teacher. Good presenter.
He's a very good teacher, and the interview in this show as well was great. Anyway, thank you, John. Great course. The second thing, which is the soccer equivalent of putting the ball in the open net, is the Checkmating Patterns Manual by Crafter
sure.
F.
You've got good taste.
Which, for someone who doesn't know how to mate at all, it's maybe a bit advanced. And we'll get into this later, but I believe when you're an adult, you can learn in like slightly larger chunks than when you're a kid. Like you're known to complex problems. You know how to learn. You know that it's not going to be easy and you have to repeat and all these things. So that was the second one. And the third one was Dodgy's tactics, which is sorted by opening.
Okay. Shout out
So,
Mr. Dodgy.
Mr. Dodgy, indeed. So the way I tried to frame this was, how can I get the largest amount of connection between what I'm training and what I'm playing? So as I did this, I started exploring Stefan's huge opening library on hanging pawns, which is fantastic and is to this day, and decided that I should try to find out what openings I'm playing. And of course, I started reviewing way too many openings lines in the beginning, as everyone does, and we should probably talk about how to learn openings. But this combination of things, that once, like I started playing 4 certain openings, I practiced the tactics from the opening that I was playing, and as well as I was focusing on mating and these different forms of attack. Like the common chess patterns does like, what is a skewer? That is excellent for me. And it helped me both to develop my chess language, which I believe is very important, because when you start this and you don't have a chess language, or your chess language is very poor, like, yeah, that piece moved from there to there, it doesn't help you conceptualize the same way it does if you start saying out loud in your head that the knight goes to b5, where you kind of connect what's happening on the board and in your head in a lot better ways. So just being able to know that what you were just, and that the kind of tactical tricks you just fell for was a discovered attack, is extremely helpful in that sense. So when I started doing this, I did a lot in the beginning, probably too much. And I realized there was too much, and I started doing it a bit more chunk by chunk. And the kind of going on from day to day, if I was allowed to work, in 2021, we had some shutdowns, but not like all the time. And I take the tram to work. So what I would do if we start on a Monday, I would do all the usual stuff, put my kids to bed, and if wifey wanted to watch Succession and drink red wine, I believe was your example familiar. Of what you have to do with your wife every now and then, which I greatly enjoy. Right. But I mean, I would say, like, please give me 15 minutes and I'm ready. Yeah. And I would sit down and I would do either 3 lines or 3 tactics. Just 3 new every day. And the next day, on the tram, on my way to work, I would repeat them on Chessable, and I would do the same on the way back. So you would have 3 repetitions in quite a short time. And then in the evening again, try to have like 15 minutes, take 3 new, then you have 6. And then you gradually build a library where you repeat it a lot of times, as well as you have that initial quality time where you actually try to solve it. And this is, I believe, where people sometimes go wrong. Because when you Google how to train for this, like, take the advice from the Wu-Tang Clan of chess, which you advertise for, the Chess Dojo. They had a podcast where they talked about, like, how to train. And I believe Jesse had, like, a list. God, I can't remember it precisely. But it was just like, you have to play games, you have to analyze games, and you should... There was a third thing I can't remember at the moment. And then he starts on a 4th where you should use your best hours on the day of chess. And when you're old like me, it should be in the morning. And you know, that last stuff, that just isn't applicable. Like, right. I'm sorry, I cannot wake up in the morning and spend my time playing chess. I have to get my kids to school. I have to work. And when I come home, I'm tired. And a lot of this advice is structured towards, like, how to do it the best way possible in a situation where you have quite a lot of time. I don't. So I need to exploit what I call low quality spare time. This is the kind of time you spend when you take your girl to swimming, for example, which I do with my youngest one. It's a 15-minute drive. Then she swims for 40 minutes, and then I had to drive her back home. So I could, of course, drive home after leaving her off, stay at home for 10 minutes, and then drive back. That's meaningless. That's just a lot of driving. So that's one example of where, unless I have to go grocery shopping, what happens? I will sit in my car and I will repeat patterns. This is not an optimal situation for chess, obviously. I'm not able to do deep, precise calculation on new positions while being in the car, but I am able to repeat what I've already solved and kind of entrench that particular pattern in my mind. And if you do that often again, like often enough, I have found at least that this has led me to having quite a decent chess intuition for the standard tactical stuff. And I believe like that's the core of my strength increase, probably. So yeah, that was a lot, probably, but that's what I started in 2021. And things started happening with my rating as it went. Like, you can feel yourself getting stronger. You can feel how your perception of the board changes. Like, not the visual, but the squares start having names. Right. Like they always had, but you started using them, and you start remembering things like bishop b5 can be really annoying if you have a knight in c6, and you start making these connections. And after a while, which I believe I'm still in that phase, you start chunking things. And of course, you discussed with Aiden Rainer how you're not able to hold too many things in a short-term memory at the same way. This process of chunking and kind of knitting it all tighter together helps free your actual attention towards the things that matter. And the more things, I feel at least, the safer I am in the position I'm playing, the better I play. This is quite natural. And of course, since I have used openings to strategically explore the chess universe, if you put me in a new opening or a new structure I've never played, I'm probably quite a bad player. But at the same time, I have now experimented so much with openings, I can play a lot of different stuff and I can play it quite well. But still, if I try something new, I usually lose the first 2 or 3 games, and then I start winning. As I get more comfortable with the position, I get exposed to how my opponent can destroy me. That's it.
So Torkil, when you've made decent progress, found some good resources, making the most of your time, when did tournament chess enter the picture for you?
Well, again, it was a friend at work, but this time a way more friendly interaction. I had a colleague at my current job, which was a controller on one of the projects I worked on, and he turned out to be a chess player, and he thought it was kind of interesting that I had started playing and that I was getting better, and he asked me, of course, have you played classical chess? And in my mind, that was just out of reach. This is practically impossible. How can I find that amount of time? That's not going to happen. And he was like, yeah, fine, I understand, we're all busy. And then a few months later, he said, like, are you aware that the national championship is happening in Oslo this summer? And I was like, no. And he said, yeah, it's over at this place. And the place he mentioned is 10 minutes by bike from my home. And I had one of these where Mercury and Mars aligns and the age of Aquarius arises, because it was the week when my kids was going to my parents' cabin. And we were supposed to work, like me and wifey. You know, the kids have 9 weeks of summer holiday here. So you have to find some solutions of what they're going to do so they just don't hang around in the house and do nothing. So that particular week, the national championship was going to happen. I didn't have any kids to follow up. And I was like, wow, if I can get time off work, this is actually doable. And that fixed itself as well. And I would have loved to say that I practice a lot. I didn't. I did one thing which was quite smart. I hired a coach, shout out to Sebastian Korman, which I employed for 8 months. We started 3 months before, where we played through classical games, starting somewhere in like the early middle game. I get a position beforehand, study the position, find the best move, explain how you found best move, and you just go from there, and you play through Grandmaster games. I felt like I needed some kind of boost in order to go from rapid to classical and playing in the national championship for the first time all at once. Like, I can't just stumble half-assed into this. I should probably do an effort. So I had 3 months with him and one practice game with my friend, like in the evening at our workplace in a meeting room where no one could see us after dark. And I entered the nationals as an unrated in the second lowest class, which at the time was 1200 to 1400. And I mean, man, classical chess is the real deal. I was blown away. Like, if I felt like rapid was intense and demanding, it's just the same 10 times over.
Yeah.
And my first win, which came on the second day, luckily, I was so happy. I was vibrating. Like, I felt like I had an aura of energy that was unstoppable. It was really like euphoria. For me, anyway. I'm quite competitive, I know, but it felt like such an achievement. And I played better than I believed I could. I got 6 out of 9 in my first 9 rated games in the championship. I was a bit disappointed by the rating, by the way. I had a performance rating of 1507. I believe that my new rating should be the same. But for some reason it was 1350. I don't understand really why, but never mind. So, I played, I got a rating, I had a great experience, and I met a lot of good people. Some weird people as well, should be said. But
Yeah, it should be said.
met mostly good people, and I was like, yeah, I really like this. I want to see if I can continue doing this somehow. And the thing was that in order to join the nationals, you had to join a chess club. And I just looked at like the poster where you register and saw like, okay, this chess club is arranging it and they're hosting it here and it's close to my house, so it's probably somewhere here. I'll join this chess club then. So I joined the chess club and I joined the nationals. And afterwards, I wanted to check out, like, can I play at my club? No, my club is actually in the central Oslo, so it's closer to work than home. But I decided to join their club tournament in the autumn, which is like a large open tournament of 9 rounds. And that was also quite good. I had to abort a bit early. Like, at the same time, I had to stop receiving coaching. I had to stop playing chess. Quite frankly, wifey told me I had not been doing sufficient amount of stuff at home. She was completely right, so I had to adjust and withdraw myself from the tournament. But I did quite well in the tournament as well. I gained another 70 points. My K factor was 40, as it is in the beginning, so it wasn't like a massive score. But I managed to beat an 1888 player.
Wow.
As a 1350.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that blew my mind. Like, I had delusional ideas, I would call them, that I would be able to do something like this. But that I was able that quick was a huge confidence boost. And, further an incentive to continue down this path I had. I felt like, I guess the feeling we all long for, that you have understood something that other people have not, in the sense that you can just do quite simple tactics, repeat them quite often, as well as exploring the game through opening, so you get some cosmos into the chaos, and you'll actually be able to play quite well in a short time. Of course, there are downsides to this as well, which we can get to, but as a first-time player, where no one knows what you're doing, this is quite an effective strategy, I believe. So that was like the year before my grand year.
Well, before we get to your grand year, it was probably started 18 months ago or something at this point, but where you made an even bigger jump. I'm just curious, for listeners who maybe haven't played a tournament yet, what was the biggest adjustment? Like, what was the biggest surprise when you walk into that hall for the first time?
A few things. The physical chessboard is a lot larger than the digital board. And that's a challenge in itself when it comes to keeping board control over the entire board. Like, it's actually quite easy just to miss parts of the board, which sounds like if you think about it, you should be able to correct it straight away, but I find that quite hard. The other thing that, of course, strikes you is the fact that you're sitting opposite to another human who's playing. But when you do it digitally, it's very easy to kind of assume that the other player is losing or playing bad moves or whatever. I found that when you see the actual person you're playing, I was much more attentive towards them and maybe a little too respectful. I find it harder to look at a person and just think like, you just played a terrible move,
Right.
than it is when you do it online, because then it's some kind of faceless chump which just blundered the piece. And of course, time is a factor here. I thought I would feel like I had an infinite amount of time when I went to classical. That's not the case. It's very simple to spend all the time and getting time trouble. Like, at least for me, that might be a personality trait, but I found it hard to evaluate how much time I had left, how I was doing with regards to the clock, if you will. So I think that's like the three biggest challenges. All these can be overcome by experience, and closing in on like 100 games, I think I'm better at classical than rapid. That's obvious. But I think I've also now like get rid of most of the children's illnesses when it comes to playing OT.
And writing the moves down and hitting the clock, that part was, how was that for you?
What's the word? I'm a forgetful person. That goes for this as well. But it's not harder than other things. I mean, when I'm in the game, I can forget to hit the clock, I can forget to write down the moves, etc. But it should be said, like, I've never had any controversy regarding this. Like, once a guy pointed out, like, you forgot to write down your move, and I said, I'm sorry, I was in my own head. And I wrote down the moves, and we went along. Like, maybe I've been lucky in that part.
Yeah, and what about with the clock? Because here in the US, the technical rule is, I mean, I think it's international, you don't have to tell your opponent if they forget to hit the clock. Would people typically tell you or not?
No, they don't.
Yeah, okay.
I figure it out after a while and I lose
Yeah.
some time. No, but I mean, it is this kind of rhythm, right? You move the piece, you write down your move, you hit the clock. And it's like anything else, it's automation. When you do it enough times, it becomes part of the process in itself and you start doing it without thinking. It still happens like once every now and then at the end of the game that I might forget to write down my opponent's move. It's never my own move anymore, but sometimes my opponent's move, especially if they do a move that I didn't see coming. And I go like, what is this? What is his plan? And you go deep in thought and you forget to write down the move before you do so because you're surprised. But it's been fairly smooth. I mean, I've lost some minutes and maybe some points. Who cares? It's too much fun to be annoyed about that kind of small details.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I just wanted to make sure people were aware that it's something that takes getting used to. So let's get to your big leap. So you've gotten your feet wet, you've played a couple big open tournaments, and then, correct me if I'm wrong, you start to play sort of more regular weekly type games at your club?
Yeah, indeed. During that first half year I played the Nationals, the club tournament, I also tried 2 weekend tournaments with 5 games each. So I played quite a lot the first 6 months. And I didn't do well in the weekend tournaments, it should be said. I still don't. I'm not sure if weekend tournaments is a thing for working dads. Like, the moment you get off work and you're supposed to relax, you have to gather your energy and play chess for 20 hours in the next 2.5 days. That's
Yeah.
But I had quite a few games. Was reaching like, how many games is it before your K factor goes from 40 to 20? Do you remember?
I don't know offhand.
Yeah, and anyway, it was like I had a few more games of K40 left. And at this point I was 14, 20 something. So I was like, okay, this is probably the level I'm going to be hanging around at. And I joined one tournament where the thing I didn't know is that they don't, in my new chess club, they didn't report the results as they went along, like month for month. They just kept them for half a year and then they sent them all in. but they still somehow kept their place in the queue as my next game. So I started playing a club game, which was a club championship, which was the first that was rated by level, like the nationals. But this time, of course, a slightly higher level, and it was 11 rounds during the spring. And I had the best tournament of my life, and probably the best tournament I'll have in quite a few years. I had 10 out of 11, and I scored a performance rating of 2,000 points plus. And at the same time, FIDE did incredibly creative rating push thing.
Right.
And since I was 1,400 when that happened, that gave me like 200 points, and then I gained an extra 200 points from this particular club meeting. So last summer, like a year ago, suddenly I was 1821, and I go, wow, this is part terrifying, part amazing. Am I strong enough for this? And the first time you do, of course, you bunker down. You have the mark of man on you. You have become an 1800 player. You must continue to strive and do your thing. And I did continue playing at that level. I played the Nordic Championship, where I didn't do too well. I had like a 1650 performance. And then I played the fall tournament at my new club, which also was the same kind, like an open group, where I scored 6 out of 9 again, and I had an 1805 performance. So having done that, I felt like, okay, I have now successfully managed to more or less defend my place as an 1800 for 6 months. It's not a fluke. But at the same time, to digress a bit, I think people find enjoyment from different things in chess. Some people really, really like to win. I have a small part of that as well. Some people really like the beauty of the game, like the perfectionists. They want every game to be perfect. What they really find pleasure in is when they have that complete game where it just flows from A to B and they crush their opponent. That's what they're going for. If they get one win like that in 3 months, they're happy. And then you have the part which I believe my foothold is the strongest in, is the ones who enjoy exploring and developing and getting better at chess. The most fascinating thing I find about chess is how the way you look at the board is just constantly changing. It's developing and developing and developing, and you're peeling off these new layers of insight when you play, which, I mean, and the way I think during a chess game is different every 6 months because it's evolving at the rate it is. And I realized after having defended my 1800 points, if you will, that I'm playing the same openings as I did when I started this year. What I want to do is to develop, not defend a number that is randomly assigned to me, not randomly, but still assigned to me through my results. If I am to improve, I should stop defending my rating and I should keep developing. That's what I want to do. So New Year's came. I started playing new openings against 1800s, 2000 rated players. Spoiler alert, that has not gone very well.
Right.
You know, it's probably too hard, and I'm probably just shooting myself in the foot. At the same time, I find that it's way too early for me to stagnate into a certain set of openings that I played that more or less, I'm not going to say exactly what I play in detail, because there is a thing called fog of war in chess, which I believe we should talk about later, but I played a set of opening that led me into quite the same kind of positions, with the same pawn structures and the same tactical ideas, more or less, of course, some variants, but I decided that I need to develop as a player. I should play a completely different set of openings, which has different pawn structure, different ideas, different ways to attack, different things you have to defend against. If I just keep on doing this, I will not evolve. at the rate I want to do. So that's what I've been doing the last 6. I mean, this idea came creeping up before I started doing it. So I started preparing something in the fall last year. But for the last 9 months, I have been training towards a new path in chess, if you will.
And with the format of the tournaments you're playing in Oslo, do your opponents, do they prepare for each other?
Yes.
So that probably factored into the decision too, right?
Yeah. This is a great bridge to the fog of war thing. And for listeners who don't know the concept of fog of war, it's what you call in a strategic game, if you have a map and you have like a unit. Imagine an old bird's view strategic game like Warcraft, or I was about to say StarCraft, but if you know Warcraft, you know StarCraft. Age of Empires, for example. If you play any of these and you have a unit and you move it around with the map, around that unit, you will see the map in an updated sense. Once the unit moves back, you just see what you saw when the unit was there. And chess has the same thing with the games that are published. I have 4 games that are public. I assume that all my opponents have looked at those games. And I never play what I played in those games.
Right.
Like, I am not going to allow myself to become a sitting duck. And I do believe that the simplest games I play are the ones where you find someone's chess.com account, for example, which can be quite simple. And you see that they play one thing against e4 all the time, and they play one thing against d4 all the time. And you can pick it apart and see where they go wrong and arrange something that will just lead them into a trap. That's the simplest games I play. That still happens sometimes, but not at the 1800 level, by the way. That is completely gone from that scene. So I'm trying to use the information people know about me against them. Mm-hmm. In that sense. And I believe that all new players should have a really attentive view on which games they have public, so they are able to counter their opponent's prep.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important when they know, when your opponent is known in these bigger tournaments where there's less time to prep, it's not as important. And the other thing is, I think just some people, it feels like a losing battle. Speaking of the fog of war, like it's just really hard, especially like the higher up you go, it's hard to not have games. And to what you've been saying about how busy you are, it's hard to have a wide enough repertoire where you can constantly surprise people. So there is the other school of thought where you just say, you know, I'm going to know the opening better. There's nothing my opponent can learn in a day or two of prep that I won't know better from having played this for years, you know. So I get where you're coming from, but certainly one could argue the other side.
I think the other side is probably better if you want to go for results.
Yeah.
Like, I'm doing this knowing that it's probably short-term hurting my results. But I like variation, I guess. I don't want to play the same chess openings for several years. There is so much chess to be played. Why should I restrict myself to that one thing? And as I mentioned, you probably will get better results just drilling down on one thing. But for me, that would be less fun than what I'm doing now. And I'm doing this for fun. It's my hobby. I would rather have fun and be a 1650 than not have fun and be in 2000.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I think, but to what you were saying earlier about the types of people, there's also the people who the fun is winning. So they're like, whatever it takes, you know, if I have to play, you know, the London, sorry to London players catching a stray, but you know, that one always gets singled out as like, you know, maybe it's the most practical, but not the most diverse in terms of the types of positions you get, then they're happy to play it. And just for the record, I'm not on Team Andres Toth on the London. I think it's fine as an opening. But so you've had some growing pains going through as you learned some more openings. So we have a Patreon mailbag question that's sort of related and maybe based on what you've been saying. Okay, so the question is from Nahul Marasi. Thanks for helping to support Perpetual Chess, Nahul. And he asks where you think the limit lies for your potential improvement. Big philosophical question, right?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious answer is I don't know, because I don't know anything. What I do know is I'm aiming towards peaking at 50. Like, that's my goal. Straight when I enter seniors, I'm going to be at my peak. And hopefully I have a very ambitious dream that I might win like the national championship in 50 plus. That's probably not going to happen, and if it is going to happen, it's because the strong players over 50 are not going to join that particular group, just play the elite. But still, like, I'm already planning towards senior chess. I think what it boils down to is how good I can get at visualizing very far ahead. I'm not really sure. If you go into like the Magnus trail of thought, you don't have to see that far if you evaluate correctly. If that's true, I think I can go 2000, maybe, in 10 years. Maybe. Maybe that's a little high. I've played a few thousands. They beat me, but they don't crush me. There is a lot I had to learn in order to get there, but in 10 years' time, with kids getting bigger and bigger and the amount of spare time becoming larger and larger, maybe. Of course, I would probably need some friends to help me study and to study together with. You should always try to get a community that can pull you back in when you're trying if you get demoralized by bad losses, etc., and you feel like you've reached the plateau. But I mean, Ben, you're probably better to answer this than I am. You know this level better than me.
Well,
but I mean, the first person I heard that was really clear about this was Dan Heisman in your talk, which in this talking about doing this when you're old said, if you start chess in your 30s, you can become a lot better when you're 40. And everyone knows Korchnoi did incredible rating gains at the late age. So, I mean, it's possible. It also depends on life. Like tomorrow something grave happens to my family and I have no time, and that's life. You don't know.
yeah. And people always want to parse the question differently. There's the one thing like, what can you achieve with your actual life constraints? And then there's a separate question, well, what if you lived in a fantasy world where you were only doing chess? And, you know, people love to debate both of them, even though the fantasy world basically doesn't exist. But Nahul may have heard me say this. I mean, certainly anecdotally, it becomes quite rare for someone to start tournament chess as an adult and to reach a level over 2200 FIDE. So my personal opinion, I think based on what you've done so far, I think 2010 years is a great goal and doable. But as you say, like it shouldn't, you know, that doesn't mean that you should set everything else aside. I think it's admirable that you found a way to make the progress you have just by utilizing the time that you have and trying not to negatively impact other aspects of your life. Which brings me to my question of like your current sort of study routine, and if you feel like you already mentioned the changing of openings, do you feel like what you have to do to reach the next level has changed as you've kind of gone up the ladder?
I think I should talk a little bit about how I view my training on like a longer scale basis. Like I've already mentioned like the method, how you get into the wheel of grinding tactics, like little by little, adding a few every day until you have like a huge library. I also have like one level over that where I have 6 or 12 months plan. And as we all know, raiding is a wonderful and terrible thing at the same time. And I realized quite early, and I also know this from having played poker when I was younger, I have a tilt side. And that happens when I connect my own performance to a concrete result, and the result doesn't go the way I feel like my performance was, usually. So in order to try to distance myself from this a little bit and not take it so personally when I lose, I try to think of my own chess journey as like a character in a role-playing game. An RPG. And I've played a few RPGs. I've never done Dungeons and Dragons, but I've played RPGs on PlayStation and my computer, etc. And I try to imagine my own chess character as this stylized person, which is me, but not me. It's me in a different setting, where you all the time gain experience and you have these different skill sets. You have tactics, you have strategic, you have positional sense, you have tactical sense. You have all these different skill bars, which I'm trying to improve based on my own perception of where I'm going. And my first like grand main quest, I also divided into main quest. This is what I'm actually training. You are not allowed to do side quests before you have finished your main quests. And my main quest for the last 1.5 years was openings. Like, learn openings well enough that you are able to feel like you're actually in control of the game and it doesn't just happen some random things you can't explain. It's it. Then I've had a long period of tactics, which was 12 to 15 months, I believe. And now for nearly 9 months, I have been looking at positional chess. So this is partly inspired by Neil Bruce, I believe was his name, the great and famous adult improver, which also had these long lines where he did things. And I believe, being in my positional chess learning phase, that I have to improve my ability to restrict my opponent from doing what they want to do more, like a bit more Karpov, if you will. And when I've finished this, I'm going to go into endgame studies, is my idea. I've already bought Sharevsky. I'm thinking that maybe I should buy, what's the American author which passed away?
Silman?
Yeah, Silman. I've heard that Silman's would probably be better for my level. And I don't do a whole lot of chess books, but when I read them, I spend like a year reading them, where I put up the board, which is behind me, and I play through every move. I'm not good enough to visualize that I can just look at the diagram and go 10 moves deep. That doesn't happen. So I have to play it out, which makes me a really slow reader of chess books, if you will. But I think I will soon reach a level where when I play other 1900s, they will not beat me out of the middle game, but we will get into some kind of imbalanced endgame. And I believe that, of course, there is a two-step thing here. First, I have to survive the middle game and get into like a decent endgame, and then I have to learn endgames to the degree that I will be able to win the endgames I'm supposed to win. I think those two things done in like the next 2 or 3 years should take me quite a step further. At the same time, I don't really know. I haven't played that many really strong players. I have less than 100 classical games in total.
Yeah. Well, a couple things on the Silman versus Sharashevsky thing. The Silman's complete endgame course is more fundamental, so it's kind of like building blocks that one should know. Although, as I kind of hint at in my book, I mean, they're important, but I just feel like people go overboard on memorizing those things, and then they occur so rarely that it's like you might not even notice when it actually occurs. Sharashevsky's endgame strategy, which I did a podcast about with Kevin Skull, that one's more conceptual and sort of gives you a framework. And I think in terms of like at your level, I think you're strong enough. You know, you won't find a lot of the moves necessarily, but I think in terms of like kind of like you like to know the to-be-is in different openings, like you'll start to know some general precepts that can help you more in all end games. So to me, I would probably spend more, and I'm biased because I personally find that more enjoyable than like rote learning of like particular end games. So there's that. But then I also wanted to ask you, across the different phases that you've already studied, if you have any sort of standout recommendations that you haven't mentioned yet, whether it be like a particular YouTube series or book or course or whatever.
I've read 2 chess books in full, which is 7 Deadly Chess Sins by Rausen and Willie Henrik's Move, Don't Think.
Move First, Think Later. Those are good,
Thank you.
choices, yeah.
Yeah, they're both excellent and highly recommended, especially the Henrik's book, because he's really funny.
Yeah.
I didn't think a chess book would make me laugh out loud in my living room, but it did. And I mean, I've done a lot of courses on Chessable. I mean, I've been doing this for 5 years, and it's 360 days a year. And if you do 3 lines every day for 5 years, it becomes quite a few lines. As for Chessable, I mentioned my starter pack, and I have a few other ones I thought were really good. I have 2 recommendations with video. One is Chess Principle Reloaded Center with Andres Dodd.
By Andres, yeah.
Yeah, that was great for me. And I feel that he wrapped it up very nicely when he said that a lot of people don't have a connection between the opening principle, grab the center, and what to actually do with the center. And it was well put, and it was a problem I had, and I believe it was well fixed. The second one is The Art of Attack in Chess by Simon Williams. I do believe he mentioned at the end of the course that if you have seen through the whole thing, I owe you a beer. I've seen through it 3 times, but if I ever meet Simon Williams, I will buy him a beer.
Okay.
Like straight up. This stuff is excellent. And for one who didn't know how to attack, to just have that kind of content is amazing. Absolutely. As for the courses I've done in a traditional sense, I would start off by saying that 100 endgames you should know is not something you should do. It almost killed my enthusiasm for chess. I got through it, but it was on pure willpower by the end, and I was not enjoying it, and I was not learning a lot, and I still haven't used a lot of what was in there. And now it probably most of it is gone as well. So
yeah,
not my favorite.
It's a very, very well explained course, but 100 endgames. First of all, it's more than 100 endgames, as I said in my book. And secondly, it's just too much. It's just too ambitious for the club player. So even Soman's endgame course, I prefer because it's delineated by rating level. So you can do it more bite size. And he's a real great writer and does a good job explaining things. They still fall in the same category of sort of fundamental chess endings, which I think people might, like amateur players, probably emphasize too much in my humble opinion. But big fan of Chess Principles Reloaded, so firm thumbs up for that one. And yeah, The Art of Attack in Chess, of course, in addition to Simon Williams having done the videos for Chessable, is a classic book that people can pick up and should. Well, Torkil, this has been amazing. You've made great progress. So I think there's a lot of people, or probably a decent number of people listening, who feel like you haven't said anything, it's been very insightful and entertaining, but you haven't said anything, like you're not doing anything outlandish or that different than everyone else, yet you've still had pretty unusual success in your first years. Is there anything else that you think might be missing from the equation, or for anyone who feels like they haven't quite made as much progress?
If I'm completely honest, when I talk to other chess players and they tell me how much they train, I think they're exaggerating. Quite a few of them. And when you really get to know them, they tell me that, yeah, I did this for a few weeks, and then I had a few weeks off, and then I started again. I believe consistency is the key. And of course, if you want to get good at chess, and if you like chess, you should also enjoy chess entertainment. Watching stuff on YouTube. Not stream, not the blitz quick stuff, but slightly educational videos as a form of relaxation is good. There's also the match element, like how to prepare for a match. As I mentioned briefly, I used to play soccer when I was younger, so I'm quite into the concepts of, for example, doing rites before, like a certain ritual before you play. I either try to sleep if I can for half an hour, or meditate for half an hour, like an hour and a half before the game, in order to start as fresh as possible. That's not always possible, but that's like an ideal situation. And I think you have a lot to gain from treating every game as a bungee jump. You go down, you sit by the board, and you play what you wanted to play in the first place. Don't chicken out. Do what you actually want to do, fail, and try again. That's the only way forward, I believe.
I mean, it's come up a lot, sort of. As adults, we have a harder time getting out of our heads, whereas kids, when you play them, it's like they can barely sit still. They're standing up half the time, and they're just like sheer impulse, which seems to work out for them quite often, whereas it's like we have to like summon our energy to try to play a sacrifice, give ourselves a little pep talk in our heads. And I do think that there's something to be said for that sort of carefree spirit, and it's a good approach to play that way, especially since it ultimately is so meaningless. But what you said, Torkil, reminded me of something that you wrote in one of our emails, which was, so you mentioned meditation, you mentioned that getting into chess ultimately led you to place more of an emphasis on nutrition and exercise and mindfulness. Like, what's the story behind that?
Well, I started looking at why do I do well in some chess games and why do I don't. And one of the things I picked up was sleep, nutrition,
Yeah.
and training. These are the key things you should be doing either the day before or the same day doing, so your head is in a shape to play. I think this is more important when you're old. The fascinating thing about every chess game I play, I mean, it's kind of a reflection, how well you play is kind of a reflection on how well your brain works that particular day. And I've had like a few aha moments where I realized things. And being close to 40, this will be no surprise to others who are close to 40. Like, I don't handle alcohol very well anymore.
Yeah,
For
that's a
example.
bitter pill when that happens.
Yeah, no, it happens at some point. And I thought, this means that I cannot drink X amount units per night because then I get so hungover I want to die. But what I've realized through chess is that even if I just have like a few glasses of wine the day before I'm playing so much worse.
Yeah, it really
It's
impacts your sleep. Yeah.
really like the difference in you is huge. And having chess as a feedback mechanism there has been very helpful. The other thing is, of course, that I find it genuinely inspiring that I have been able to become quite a lot better at this, despite not doing the 5 hour day thing, which is what most grandmasters say you have to do to become a grandmaster. And that's fine, but I don't want to be a grandmaster. I want to become slightly better at chess every year, preferably. For me, this is new. I have never managed to improve gradually in things before. I'm usually the kind of guy who like dives headfirst into whatever it is I'm doing, and I get super enthusiastic for a few years, and then I'd leave it and move on to something else. Like, for example, I DJ'd for 5 years, which was just a friend of mine did it. I thought it looked fun. He challenged me to come play with him one day, and I did. And suddenly that was all I wanted to do with my spare time, and I played a lot. And then I had kids, and I moved on. That would be how I usually approach it. But having had this success in chess, I'm trying to do the same, for example, with exercise. As many dads, when you get kids, I used to be in good shape. I was in terrible shape 5 years ago. Now it's slightly better, and I'm trying to implement the same idea. I go cycling a lot, and I try to convince myself that you don't need to do it the way you did, where you like bike 3 hours and
Right.
do like a long. If you could do 1 hour, that's a lot better than zero. I mean, if it's only 1 hour that week, well, it's still 1 hour. And then you try to do more next week. It doesn't need to be that pro. And I find that chess in that sense has inspired me to approach these things with the time I do have available as a dad, instead of what I did 5 years ago, which was basically just not do any of these things because it was so busy. And if I couldn't do it 2 hours a week on a Tuesday between 6 and 8, it wasn't worth doing, if you will.
Yeah.
And I didn't used to meditate. I tried it when I was young, but I didn't felt like it gave me something. But now, as approaching 40, it's different. I feel really refreshed after half an hour of meditation, which, I mean, people have told me this before, but I didn't quite believe it would have worked for me. But chess has helped me explore that avenue. If you look at the semantics behind mindfulness, I can't tell the difference between mindfulness and chess. Mindfulness is the lack of impulses like sound and visual, etc. That's chess. It's just you, another dude, and a board in a room that's entirely quiet. Nothing is happening. And the only thing you're doing for 3, 4, 5 hours is chess. It's delightful. Like, if people ask me if I'm doing mindfulness or no mindfulness, I will answer them, yes, I play chess.
Well said. Yeah. I mean, chess, when it goes well, there is something meditative because it's a one thought, it's like one entity, one thing that you're thinking about. Mindfulness, some people describe it as being without thought. You try to just make your mind go blank. But even one thing to think about is a lot less than you usually, than most of us usually have going on. So I think that is part of the joy of the escapism that chess can provide. But so Torkil, we need to wrap up. This has been fantastic. Really appreciate you sharing your story. I wish you continued success. If anyone listening wants to reach out to you, are you open to that or?
Yeah, sure. I should make a Lichess account that's public so people can message me. I'll do this after this, and I can send you the link so you can put it
and
in
I'll
the
put
show
it in the
notes.
description for anyone
Yeah, and
who wants to
happy
message.
to talk.
And then you can play all the openings that you're not actually going to use on that account.
Yeah.
So that when people prep for you, they'll look up the wrong opening. All right,
it's time for G.
Excellent. Well, exactly. All right. Well, like I said, really, really inspiring conversation. Thank you so much, Torkil. Yeah, keep me posted via email of how things are going.
Thank you for having me, Ben. Have a great day.
Awesome.